Okay, here we go. All right, guys, this is going to be a quick stream. Basically, there was a question in the Reallusion forums related to backgrounds, continuous backgrounds, backgrounds that can be cycled around and animated in a way that they pretty much just keep going. You know, to create a full animated cycle of a background. These type of backgrounds are very useful when you're creating like a run cycle. You don't want to animate the whole thing. You just want to animate a little piece and just have that background just kind of keep going on forever. It works very great for scenes where you're having to drive a car and you just have your characters talking while the background just keeps going on forever, and many other sequences in the web series Batman Missions. We use this technique a lot, and there's so many ways of doing this. Today, I'm just going to show you how to do a horizontal cycle. You can do circular, you can do vertical, you can do like zooming in and out type cycles. So it all depends on how it's created. But what you're about to learn right now, you can apply it to any type of background cycle. So let's go ahead and get the show started. I'm going to show you a little piece from the Batman series. This is a sequence where Batman and Robin are basically in the car talking. They're doing stuff. And you'll notice, let me change to the thing here. You'll notice, you know, they're just sitting there. And there's a window on the Batmobile where we can see outside. And as they're driving, the background is just spinning. Now, if you notice a little bit of artifacting here on the left-hand side, right here on the left-hand side, how it kind of like disappears in and out. That doesn't matter because that's outside of the camera. But what we're focusing on is the inside of this window. Notice how inside of the window itself, the background is itself continuous. And it actually stays continuous and seamless throughout the duration of the sequence. And it is a very short sequence, so in terms of the Batman itself, you can see him glitching out and kind of starting over. But that's because his motion is not a cycle. We're only looking at the background cycle itself. So how is this done? The simple answer is that you draw your stuff in a way that it starts exactly the same way that it ends. And I'm going to try to hide a lot of this stuff here. Let's see. Now this particular cycle is basically a bunch of trees that have been blurred, but it still gives you the same idea. And basically, as you can see here, it's a long animation, but notice what's going on here. We got this big tree here that's exactly the same. We have this big tree here that's exactly the same as this one. This cloud is exactly the same as this one. So really, all that we're doing is animating this cycle so that it moves left to right, and it literally just goes from this position where this tree is on this section here, and it moves until the tree is exactly at the same position. So the end result is that it starts exactly where it stops, and all it's doing is animating from right to left. Very simple. So let's take a little bit more of an in-depth look at how this is can be created, because at the end, you know, once you actually play it and loop it, if we cover up the sides, all we're focusing on is on the center, and that is very beautifully animated. It just continues to cycle on and on forever. Let's go ahead and create a new project here. And what I'm about to show you can be done in any piece of software. This is more about drawing than it is about animation. So in my case, I'm going to use Flash as an example. And here in Flash, I have a project set up at 1080p, basically 1080 by, 1920 by 1080. I'm going to create a square here, just so I can have some kind of guide Let's see here, window, properties. And you can use whatever software you're comfortable with. This is just about drawing. It has nothing to do with the software that you're using. You can use Photoshop, you can use Inkscape, you can use Affinity Designer. It really doesn't matter. And if you do your stuff correctly, you can even do this inside of CrazyTalk itself by laying out the props. But I'm going to show you the creative process first. Let me see here. 1920 by 1080. All I'm doing is creating some kind of guide. And basically, I made a square that's exactly the same size as my stage, 1920 by 1080. And I'm basically going to make this, I'm going to take this square, group it, and I'm going to duplicate it. And I'm just going to move it to the side here. Now you can make these as long as you want, okay? It just depends on the level of information you're going to put in there. In most cases, all you need is to make them twice as big as you need them. See, 1920. So in this case, I'm basically making my shape to be twice as wide. Now you can make this 3 times as wide if you want to put some additional stuff in the middle. The important thing is that you have to start with the same exact panel on the left hand side as you do on the right hand side. So using this thing as a guide, I'm actually going to go ahead and make my stage bigger just so I can be able to see the full stage. Let's see here. 1920 times 2 equals 3840. That gives me twice the size. And I have my little guide here. I'm going to lock this layer up. I'm just going to use that as a guide. And I'm going to create a new layer. I'm just going to draw some basic, simple stuff, okay? I'm going to draw maybe a tree. Nothing too advanced, nothing too crazy. Maybe some bushes. Maybe some clouds. All right. And we're not worried about the artwork itself. We just want to basically have something in here that we can use for visual references. Now you take your time, as much time as you need in order to create your own artwork. Now I'm trying to make this stream as quick as possible so that we don't spend too much time on it. So I have 3 elements. I have a cloud, a tree, and a bush. I'm going to go ahead and group these together. Now, without moving any of my stuff, I'm basically going to take all the stuff that's on the left-hand side, and I'm going to basically duplicate it on the right-hand side. And let's maybe make like a background, like an additional background here. Let's see, what's a nice color to use? So kind of grayish. Now the idea is that it needs to start exactly the way that it started. It needs to start exactly the way that it ends. So your drawings have to also have that kind of symmetry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use a little bit of a guide here. See, so they're not even. I'm going to use my left hand side as a guide for how my right side is used. All right, so I'm just going to bring this in here. Control G, and I'm going to duplicate that. And I'm going to make it match. So I want my starting points to be between these two lines. Basically, we need to try to make them match as close as possible. Let's see. And this is at its simplest form. All right. Paste in place. And we have something that looks like that. That's good enough for now to get the idea across. So what we're going to do is we're going to take this entire piece of artwork, which pretty much ends exactly the same way that it starts. Maybe I should get this a little bit more accurate. Hang on, let's try this again with all 4 elements. Now we got something that's exactly the same on the left hand side as it is on the right hand side. So now what we do is we're going to take this entire thing, we're going to turn that into one graphic. So now what we can do, and I'm going to show you the technique inside of Flash itself, and then I'm going to show you how you can animate this inside of CrazyTalk. So first of all, so you can just kind of see the theory behind it, we're going to take this symbol, and on frame 1, which is going to leave it there, we're going to turn our stage back to normal. 1920. Oops. So basically we are looking at the visual area of the camera. Basically it's 1920, and this stuff is left on the outside. That's the part that you don't see. And on frame 1 we're going to leave it exactly the way it is, and maybe on frame we're going to make it 1 second long. Maybe on frame 24 we're going to create another keyframe, but that keyframe is going to be moved over here. And what we want to do is we need to align it pretty much exactly the way where the first image was. That way, the first frame is like this, the second frame is like that. So basically, it starts exactly the way that it ends. When we animate this, create classic tween, we have something that looks like this. Of course, this is only a 24 frame sequence. And when we just play the whole thing over and over, it's going to look like this. All right, so if we block the sides and focus only on what's visible is a never-ending continuous loop, even though the sequence itself is only 24 frames long. Let's take a look at this in a more smaller image area. So there's the sequence right there. As you can see, it's pretty much just going and going forever with no apparent visual break. And this is the same type of technique that you'll use inside of CrazyTalk itself. If you're using Flash and you're doing animation within Flash, you can easily export the sequence file, export, and use that as an animated prop. Just drop it in there. And it's just going to loop forever and ever, basically. Of course, the sides are going to get cut off, but it's up to you to kind of either make it longer or just, you know, adjust your camera placing so that you're only focusing on the main area of what this thing is. And we know that it's only these 3 elements right here. There's 4 elements. So when we frame it, what we want to do is, let's see here, let's adjust it to a proper camera aspect ratio. We're going to frame it so that it includes just this section here. Now when we play it, we end up with something that looks like that. And if you have a character, if we have a character that we're using, we can create our character's animation in front of this never-ending background cycle. See, animation. I'm pretty sure we have some kind of running motion that we can use. Okay, we're gonna just kind of leave it like that for now, and we'll just extend this animation so it goes on for a long time. It just cycles through. The end result is something that looks like this. He just keeps going on forever, basically. And I may have animated that the wrong way, so let's turn him around. Let's see what that looks like. There you go. Of course, when the character animation stops, then the character is going to stop. But the background will continue to go on forever. And that's if you're doing it from Flash, where you're using the SWF file as the animated prop itself. That's probably the more recommended way of doing this. Of course, you can do it in CrazyTalk itself. Let's go ahead and export this image. Instead of animating it, instead of animating it in Flash, I'm gonna export just that image. So now I have a PNG file version of this sequence. Which is right here. So by itself, it really doesn't do anything. We have to literally manually animate this. So now it's a PNG sequence. So we're going to put this on the edge right there. And maybe put it right here. And we'll make the sequence, how many frames is that? Frame 18. We're gonna make the sequence just 18 frames long. So all we did is animate it from right to left, and we're animating that inside of CrazyTalk itself. So, and it's only an 18 frame sequence, so we created it in a way that it's a never-ending loop cycle, both in the character as well as the background. And that's something that if you had the static image, which you create in Photoshop or somewhere else where it's not pre-animated, this is how you animate it inside of CrazyTalk. You just make it stop exactly the same place where it started, and at that point you cut off the animated sequence so that it just keeps looping like that forever. Now, if you're animating it, if you're drawing in Photoshop, you have a few more things that you can do. Let's see here. Because you can take advantage of some of the filter effects. And I'm not sure if you're able to simply go into Photoshop from something that's already there. Let me see if it'll allow us to do it from within CrazyTalk. Yes, it does. It lets you send it over to Photoshop directly from here. So if you're doing it in Photoshop, feel free to just draw your stuff directly in there any way you want. Or if you already have the PNG and you want to do additional effects to it, we can just go into CrazyTalk, if I can find it, send it to Photoshop, and here we have our image that we would have done if we just drew it from scratch. Basically, you know, it starts exactly it ends exactly the same way that it starts. We're gonna play around with some filter effects, blur, maybe a motion blur. Something like that. Save it, and we'll send it in. We'll go into CrazyTalk again to take a look at the updated version. See how it's nice and blurry on the edges. So if you combine those two, that's not going to work if you did it in Flash. But if your image is already a raster-based image, then you can go ahead and apply additional filters to it just to enhance it better. So now you have something that looks like that. It's got that motion feel to it, you know, like he's really running, and he's running fast. And it just keeps going on forever. Now you can take this 18 frame sequence, take it into your video editor, into After Effects, whatever, and just loop that over and over. You'll have a big old long never-ending cycle. What else can we do? Now again, the backgrounds can be drawn anyway in any program that you want. We're not so much focused on which program. If you're using Flash, of course, you can pre-animate it inside of Flash, so you can drop in the pre-animated loop, and then you can do other things more advanced in CrazyTalk. But if you're just looking to make small sequences like this, or if you just would much rather work with Photoshop or whatever, then just draw your stuff in Photoshop and take advantage of some of the more advanced filter effects. Now we can actually lay out backgrounds without having to draw anything in CrazyTalk. So let's see if we have some elements here. I don't know if I have them installed, but let's see if we can pull this off. Let's go to the props. See if I have anything in here. I got some trees, and I got like a street thing. Let's drop that in here. All right, so that should work fine. Let's duplicate that. And we'll add a tree. Actually, we don't have to do the duplication all at once. We can actually focus on just our one element. Let's see what else we have here that we can probably use. We got some buildings. You're just gonna use your whatever props you have to build your own background. Okay. Let's see. See if I have anything else I can put in there. There's one more building that I can drop. For whatever reason, that building is giving me a hard time selecting it. Let's see here. That's good enough. So we're going to take all of these and we're going to duplicate them. Let's put another tree over here just so we can have more variety. We're going to take all of these elements and we're going to duplicate them by holding down the control key, and then shift will keep it all on the same plane. And we're just going to come in here and just kind of attach this section right there. And now we're going to basically select everything. We'll move it to a nice starting point. I'm going to use the edge of that building on the edge of my camera just to have some kind of reference. But you can find your own starting point. Maybe make these a little bit larger. All right. And on the final frame, yep. We're just going to bring this over and pretty much place it exactly where we started, so that when we play this, we have something that looks like that. A never-ending cycle. And we were able to put that together using just props within CrazyTalk itself without any of the external programs. Of course, we probably won't be able to do the blur effects on these things as a whole graphic, but you could probably do it each element at once, which will probably be a little bit of a pain in the butt to do if you're doing every little item. Um, let's see here. Now, we don't worry about the little thing disappearing and appearing on the edges because that's outside of the camera's field of view. So we don't worry about that. We only worry about what's in the middle. And what's on the middle, we can see that it's just a never-ending animated cycle. It's 18 frames long. It keeps going on forever. So it's a pretty good technique. I think that about covers it. You can do this type of technique with pretty much any type of cycle. You can make a cycle of a character zooming in and out. I mean, a background, so that if you're driving forward or you want to put it on behind. If you're driving and you want to see what the city's looking at behind them, you can do that kind of loop, that cycle that way. You can do it at any angle, really, within a perspective angle. The key trick is that within the area, the visual area of the camera, it has to start exactly the way that it ends. So, keeping that in mind, you can do all sorts of nice looking animated cycles that are not that processor intensive, and you could just loop over and over and over forever without any visual distortion. So, all right, I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you learned something new. If you have any questions for me, if you'd like me to make any other videos demonstrating other techniques, just send them my way, and I'll be able to put more videos like this together for you guys. So I hope you enjoyed it. If you like the videos that I'm producing these days, go ahead and subscribe. It means a lot to me. I'm trying to raise my subscription level so I can start monetizing these videos. And if you want to be notified every time I upload something or every time I go live, click on that little bell icon at the bottom, and you'll be like the first to know whenever I start. Because I usually don't tell anybody once I start broadcasting stuff. I just kind of go, and yeah, if you like some of the stuff that I use in my videos and stuff, visit toontitan.com. A lot of these backgrounds, these graphical elements, the characters, they're all available at toontitan.com. Yeah, you guys have yourselves a great day.